Thank you very much for joining us today. This event is focused on the tragedy of extrajudicial executions in Colombia. Throughout the Colombian conflict, the security forces have been implicated in a huge number of extrajudicial executions. The guerrilla forces, for their part, have also been responsible for numerous arbitrary killings. This meeting has been organized by MAFAPO, an NGO working for justice in cases of numerous killings undertaken by the army, and the event has also been organized by the Colombian Truth Commission and aims to highlight to an international audience the truth of these crimes. Today, we are joined by Jacqueline Castillo, one of the mothers of Soacha, a group of mothers campaigning for justice for the killing of their sons by the security forces. Sergeant Carlos Mora, a member of the Colombian Armed Forces. Jimena Bengoechea, a barrister and former official of the Colombian Office of the Procurator General, an institution charged with disciplinary investigations of state officials. Jonathan Mosquera of MAFAPO, who will talk about its international work on the Madres de Soacha case. Camilo Ortado, who works with the Colombian Truth Commission and will talk about the work of the Commission is undertaking on the Madres de Soacha case and an event happening on Tuesday, the 10th of May. Before inviting the other speakers to give their presentations, I will provide an overview of the Truth Commission, extrajudicial executions, and outline some objectives of this presentation. We will speak in English, except for Jacqueline Castillo and Sergeant Mora, who will speak in Spanish, and we are organizing a translation of their interventions. Start with the Truth Commission. The Truth Commission is part of the transitional justice system, which was created following the peace accord between the FARC guerrilla and the Colombian government in 2016. The system is comprised of three mechanisms: the Jurisdicción Especial para la Paz, or Special Jurisdiction for Peace, a criminal tribunal empowered to order alternative punishments in cases where guilty parties tell the truth about their crimes and contribute to clarifying the facts, or hefty prison sentences to the contrary. The system is also comprised of two non-judicial bodies, humanitarian bodies, the Unidad de Búsqueda de Personas Dadas por Desaparecidas, or the search unit for presumed disappeared persons, dedicated to the search for thousands of people disappeared in the context and as a result of the armed conflict, and the Comisión para el Esclarecimiento de la Verdad, la Convivencia y la No Repetición, or Comisión de la Verdad, the Commission for the Clarification of the Truth, Coexistence, and Non-Recurrence, known as the Truth Commission. The Truth Commission seeks to clarify what happened during the conflict, and in so doing recognize the violations and abuses victims and survivors faced during the conflict. So the Commission seeks to clarify the truth of the human rights abuses and violations which occurred during the conflict and uncover what was behind these crimes, to recognize and acknowledge the truth of the human rights violations and abuses faced by victims and survivors, to promote coexistence, i.e. to search for a route to end the acute polarization of Colombian society, and to work towards the non-repetition of violence. The final report, which has been launched on the 28th of June, seeks to establish the collective responsibilities behind the violence, not just those of the armed and security forces, paramilitary forces, or guerrilla forces, but also those of political, economic, and other sectors of civil society. And the report seeks to be a tool for Colombian civil society to be able to demand action to dismantle and confront the interests and structures responsible for the violence, that are benefiting from the violence, and to end impunity, to end the impunity that ensures that violence continues. In effect, the report is not the end of the process, it is the beginning. This event, this meeting, like numerous others organized by the Truth Commission, hopefully provides an opportunity to recognize the truth behind human rights violations and abuses, and in this case, extrajudicial executions. Why is recognition and acknowledgement so vital? Over decades of armed conflict, the perpetrators of violations have enjoyed a high degree of impunity. And impunity is not accidental. It is an integral part of military tactics. It is a way of enhancing terror. It sends a clear message to victims and their families. If you complain about this, the same thing is going to happen to you. Who is going to believe you anyway? Who is going to investigate this? In this manner, victims and survivors have often been forced to remain silent and to bear the burden of what they have suffered internally. In the case of extrajudicial executions, Colombian and international human rights organizations have repeatedly denounced these crimes over decades of conflict. They have condemned the high levels of impunity that have protected the perpetrators of these crimes, and in particular senior military commanders. The impunity is often secured by the practice of manipulating the scene of the crime, the continued role of the military justice system, which NGOs and international human rights bodies have reiterated has been instrumental in guaranteeing impunity, the killings and threats of human rights defenders and relatives of victims demanding justice, or threats against criminal investigators who try to move investigations forward, and if not threats, removal of those officials from the investigation of the case. These practices continue, as indicated in recent reports in the media and information received in recent days from human rights lawyers. The case of the mothers of Soacha is one that has helped bring international attention to the crime of extrajudicial executions committed by the armed and security forces in Colombia. The campaign of the Mothers for Justice began as they met in the offices of the Attorney General and realized they shared similar stories, how their family members were lured out of Soacha, a district in the metropolitan area of Bogota, many with offers of employment. They were forcibly abducted and subsequently were found killed far from the metropolitan area of Bogota. Their campaign for justice has been marked by repeated threats which in some cases have forced several of the mothers and others seeking to expose the responsibility of the armed forces in these killings into exile. I want to stress, as this meeting is taking place outside Colombia, that exile is one of the violations of the conflict the Truth Commission is seeking to expose and recognize. I mentioned that impunity has often meant that victims and survivors have been forced to bear the burden of what they've suffered internally. When fleeing into exile, this burden may be exacerbated. So many exiles to whom we have spoken have told us that when they say they are Colombian, they are greeted with stereotypes, drugs, Pablo Escobar. In this context, how do you tell your story? Will you be believed? We hope this event will serve to recognize the truth of victims and survivors of the crime of extrajudicial executions at international level, and in particular to encourage listeners to this event to send messages of international solidarity to reach Soacha by 10th May, the day the Truth Commission is organizing an event focused on the case of the mothers of Soacha. Finally, I want to add this event takes place as we approach the publication of the final report of the Commission on the 28th of June. The report's launch comes shortly before a new government takes over in Colombia in August 2022. And now international support is crucial to make sure that the new government prioritize and commit to the implementation of its recommendations. The recommendations of the report will involve challenging powerful vested interests opposed to efforts to dismantle structures which perpetuate impunity and which allow continued violence. Now, if the new government is critical of the peace process, international support is crucial to ensure that it does not dismiss the recommendations in the report out of hand. Whilst if the new government is committed to the current peace process, this international support is crucial to provide political space for it to take decisive action. At the same time, in the context of ongoing human rights violations against human rights defenders and other activists campaigning for justice, international support is vital to provide space for these sectors to pursue their campaigns. I'll just now introduce then the order of speakers. So we'll start with Jacqueline Castillo, one of the mothers of Soacha, and she will tell her story and the wider story of the mothers of Soacha. And I'll introduce the other speakers as it's their turn to speak. So thank you very much for your attention and your presence here tonight.
Gracias, Peter. De verdad que muchas gracias por esta oportunidad. Soy Jacqueline Castillo, hermana de Jaime Castillo. Él desapareció el 10 de agosto del año 2008 en la ciudad de Bogotá y apareció muerto el 12 de agosto del mismo año 2008 en Ocaña Norte de Santander, junto con los jóvenes de Soacha, como guerrillero dado de baja en combate. Cuando estaba buscando a Jaime, vi la noticia de lo que había sucedido con los jóvenes de Soacha. Nunca me imaginé que él formara parte de este acto tan macabro que se estaba viviendo en Colombia. Fue algo muy doloroso saber que quienes están para cuidar la vida de los ciudadanos hayan sido quienes hayan cegado la vida a miles de civiles. bajo falsas promesas de trabajo, empezaron de manera sistemática a desaparecer los jóvenes en distintas regiones del país y llevados a tierras muy lejanas de su hogar para ser asesinados miserablemente y dar esos resultados que estaba exigiendo el Estado y poder mostrar que se estaba ganando la guerra. Desde este momento que encontré a mi hermano, decidí buscar a las madres de Soacha. Tengo que decir que estas madres son la gran mayoría familias desplazadas de sus tierras, familias muy humildes que ni siquiera alcanzaron una secundaria. Y tenía que dar esta lucha con ellas, por ellas y por mi hermano. Esto no se podía quedar en el olvido. Era algo gravísimo que había hecho el Estado y había que visibilizarlo, había que luchar por esa justicia, por esa verdad. Tristemente tengo que decir que por la justicia ordinaria fueron muy pocos los avances que tuvimos. El caso de mi hermano nunca tuvo ni siquiera imputación de cargos a nadie. Y así sucedió con varios de los casos de las madres de Soacha. Y a lo largo y ancho del país, muchas circunstancias similares. Pero luego en este trabajo que hemos venido haciendo en la Justicia Especial para la Paz, teníamos esa esperanza de conocer la verdad, de escuchar qué había sucedido y por qué habían asesinado a nuestros familiares. Es una lucha que hemos dado ya 14 años, este año cumplimos 15 años en esta lucha. Y a lo largo de estos 15 años creo que es importante, más que conocer una condena ejemplar, es conocer la verdad. Este trabajo que se ha venido haciendo tanto con la Comisión de la Verdad, con la Justicia Especial para la Paz, creo que sí es importante. Creo que sí es un logro lo que se hizo hace una semana de poder tenerlos a ellos frente a frente, reconociendo que sí habían cometido estos crímenes, que sí lo habían hecho, que sí había presión, como lo han dado en sus testimonios. Eran calificados de acuerdo a las bajas, lo más importante eran las bajas, había presión por las bajas. Creo que a estas alturas de trabajo, tanto con la Comisión de la Verdad como la Justicia Especial para la Paz, es también entender lo que sucedió, es también entender un poquito y ponernos en los zapatos del otro. Creo que gana más el que perdona y no el perdonado. Tenemos que seguir trabajando para buscar un mejor futuro a nuestras próximas generaciones, seguir trabajando para que de alguna manera tengamos garantías de no repetición. No ha sido fácil estos 15 años, hemos venido trabajando a través del arte, de la pintura. En este momento estamos en la preventa del primer libro, cuando fuimos enterradas en la tierra. Y hoy, 15 años después, podemos decir que podemos trabajar y sanar a través del arte. Podemos hacer memoria a través del arte. Podemos perdonar a través del arte. Podemos reconciliarnos. Creo que el trabajo maravilloso que hizo la comisión de podernos juntar con ellos frente a frente, la Comisión de la Verdad, estar frente a frente y la Justicia Especial para la Paz, de poderlos tener, mirarlos a los ojos y entender un poco esta dura realidad, es lo que nuestro país necesita. Pero creo que en este siguiente gobierno la lucha debe ser por recuperar la confianza de las fuerzas militares. Se ha perdido totalmente la confianza, llámese SMAT, policía, ejército, no hay confianza en ellos. Y la lucha debe ser por recuperar esa confianza, por volver a trabajar al respeto de los derechos humanos. Creo que esto es lo más importante que vemos, a pesar de que en junio termine esta comisión. En varios espacios les he dicho con quienes hemos trabajado, incluso con militares, tenemos que trabajar de la mano y seguir luchando por esta paz que tanto necesita Colombia.
Now I pass over to Sergeant Carlos Eduardo Mora, who will speak about the army and its responsibility in extrajudicial executions and in particular his own case. So thank you very much, Carlos, for your time and your contribution.
Thank you, Sutro. Bueno, buenas tardes, noches para todos. De nuevo, para mí es un honor poder estar acá hablando ante la comisión, en la Comisión de la Verdad. Ya me han abierto muchos espacios en los que he podido hablar y contar mi verdad de lo que yo viví. Decía la señora Jacqueline, muy cierto que llevan más de 15 años en esta lucha. Y yo hace poco estaba buscando documentos sobre cuándo fue la primera vez que denuncié sobre estos actos barbáricos que cometieron miembros del ejército. Y encontré un documento desde el 2006. Inicié a denunciar sobre estos actos de asesinato de personas o colusión o unión de miembros del ejército con paramilitares en el norte de Santander. Yo fui fundador de la Brigada Móvil 15, la mal conocida Brigada Móvil 15, donde asesinaron a estos muchachos de Soacha. Y me di cuenta desde muy temprano de esta unión que había entre militares y paramilitares para ganar unos premios, condecoraciones, paseos, permisos, dinero inclusive, y otros para poder traficar drogas sin ningún problema. Esto se volvió una monstruosidad que se salió de las manos de absolutamente todos, y lamentablemente el primer y único responsable de esto es el Ejército Nacional. No hay más responsables. Acá no podemos echar la culpa al conflicto o no podemos decir que son solo algunas manzanas podridas, porque de algún lado se inició esto. Y si fueron unas manzanas podridas en algún tiempo, pues estas manzanas podridas lograron hacer que unas manzanas quedaran calladas y que otras manzanas también se pudrieran y no detuvieran esto. Yo la primera vez que conocí a las mamitas de Soacha les decía que les pedía disculpas, porque si bien no estaba en la Brigada Móvil 15 cuando asesinaron a sus hijos, tenía la sensación de que hubiera podido haber hecho algo más, denunciar a alguien más, hablar con alguien más, pero en ese 2006 y 2007 cuando comencé a denunciar, casi pierdo mi vida, fui amenazado, fui saboteado, me hicieron bullying, me hacen bullying, yo creo que hasta el día de hoy por hacer lo que hice. Son más de 16 años contando la verdad de lo que viví en esa Brigada Móvil 15, de cómo para mí la institución a la que siempre quise pertenecer y la que siempre llevé y aún llevo en mi corazón, cometía estas atrocidades. Fue para mí muy triste darme cuenta que mis comandantes no me prestaban atención, que por el contrario, cuando comencé a denunciar, como lo mencionaba anteriormente, fui amenazado, fui excluido de la fuerza. He sido guerrillero, he sido loco, he sido traficante de armas, he sido cerebro. Por todo he pasado para callarme, para que no siga hablando, para que no siga colaborando con esta verdad. Pero estamos en la lucha, seguimos en la lucha. La historia es una historia muy larga. Era mi proyecto de vida estar en el ejército, es una historia muy larga. Pero simplemente quiero decir que el único responsable de esto es el ejército, es el que tiene que responder, es el que tiene que ser el más interesado en que esto no se olvide. Porque si esto se olvida, lo volvemos a repetir. El ejército tiene que trabajar día a día, todos los días, hora a hora, minutos y segundos por recuperar la confianza de la gente. Y qué triste que esto no se haya comenzado a hacer ya. Qué triste que las mamás no puedan entrar a un batallón y hablar con los soldados y mostrarles el sufrimiento que tuvieron ellas y decirle a los soldados que ellos están para defender a la gente y no para asesinarla. Qué triste que las mamitas no puedan ir a una escuela de formación de los militares y dar una sola clase de derechos humanos o mostrando su dolor. Pero al día de hoy, yo como miembro activo del ejército, porque soy activo, me doy cuenta que el ejército no quiere hacer esto. Y por el contrario, hay muchos que aún niegan que esto haya sucedido. Mi familia tuvo que salir recientemente de Colombia por amenazas, por atentados, y atentados a pesar de que hay gente que está hablando en la JET y atentados que a pesar de que hay gente que está hablando en la Comisión de la Verdad, pero que algunos quieren ocultar, porque hay muchos mandos involucrados, muchos altos mandos involucrados. Yo solicité la salida o el retiro de la institución porque más que temer por mi vida, porque la verdad no temo por mi vida, quiero ver a mi hija crecer y quiero acompañarla muchísimo tiempo más. Y aún así la institución no quiere dejarme salir, quiere que permanezcan, quieren que vuelva a Colombia a exponer mi vida, a exponer la vida de mi familia, a pesar de que psicológicamente mi esposa se encuentra muy mal. Inclusive yo no creo tener las fuerzas para volver a Colombia y enfrentar todo lo que ya he enfrentado durante tantos años. Yo solo pido a la gente que escucha esto, a la comisión, que presionen más. Presionen para que las fuerzas militares sean esas fuerzas militares que dice la señora Jacqueline. Unas fuerzas militares que sean respetadas, que sean las primeras en defender los derechos humanos y que no se dude de su actuar como está pasando ahora. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Carlos, for your intervention. I'm now going to pass over to Jimena Benguechea, who will speak about issues around impunity, the legal aspects surrounding the crisis of extrajudicial executions in Colombia. So thank you very much, Jimena.
Thank you for the invitation, Peter. And thank you to Jacqueline Castillo and Sergeant Carlos Mora for their interventions. They are humbling and extremely painful to listen to. Right, false positive as such is a term that's used when there is a diagnostic error, when a test is used to identify an illness and it shows a positive result when such illness is absent. Despite the fact that we use the term false positives to refer to this phenomenon or civilian killings in Colombia, this was not an error. The false positives were a deliberate, systematic action of the state targeting civilians, non-combatants, to try to demonstrate that in increasing the numbers of those dead in combat, they were winning the war against the guerrillas. Whenever you have agents of national security forces individually engaged in killing civilians, non-combatants, in the exercise of their duties, this is known as an extrajudicial execution. But the false positives in Colombia had a very particular features. These were not individual actions, they were systematic. It engaged the institutions as such, not just the army, but also the national police, who is a civilian force, which also is there to look after the life and the rights of Colombian citizens. On top of that, the modus operandi was very, very singular in that they were targeting these deprived communities that Jacqueline Castillo referred us to, where there was a great necessity for sources of income, job, and members of the army would advertise false opportunities for the labor market, call people for interviews, and when they turned up, that's when they were detained arbitrarily, transported to locations where active war war operations were being undertaken, and then executed and made to seem or dressed as guerrilla combatants, guerrilla fighters, in order to increase the statistics on the killings. And also, it was the feature that there were recompenses associated with the number of killings, and these could range from vouchers to go and get food, to getting leave for a weekend, or to get promotions. Now, the difficult thing is how to understand that this has not just been an individual phenomenon, but a systematic one, and then you have to come to where did the order came from. These were the ministerial directives that were proposing all these schemes of recompense for those members who could demonstrate effective killings. And a condition necessary for the payment or for the recognition of said awards and prizes, there had to be an official document where the operation, the tactical operation the number and the identity of the military unit involved had to be there for them to be recognizable for payment. Therefore, it's very difficult to say that this was not institutional. Also, the ministerial directives came from the ministerial office and the commanders of the forces, who depend from the president himself, because there is a line of command, there is a chain of command. The army does not, it's not a deliberating force. It acts according to orders, and the orders travel from top to bottom and not the other way around. Right, the implications for us are that they have been known as extrajudicial executions at least since 2010. But the problem is the response of the state, albeit there are countless provisions within the legal system, because murder is criminalized, abduction is criminalized. Nonetheless, the ordinary courts in Colombia are highly ineffective. Their impunity is rife, and it applies to most crimes, not just those crimes that are related to the armed conflict. Now, there has been a great debate as to whether these type of conducts, because they were committed by members of the army during the course of their duties, were covered by fuero militar or a special jurisdiction like martial law that could apply only to them and be judged by military tribunals. That has been an ongoing dispute that at least since 1995 it keeps coming back into the public arena in Colombia, travels through the Senate and so on. But it is clear that a murder or a rape cannot be of civilians, cannot be related to the military operation. Is not a legitimate activity, and therefore these are not privy to military tribunals, but have to be, if they're going to be known by the judicial authorities, these have to be ordinary courts. Now, interestingly, the constitutional arrangement for Colombia allows for all conventions and instruments of human rights that Colombia is signatory to be incorporated automatically into the system. So the actions of the army or the armed forces have to be subjected to these international instruments. And part of those international instruments that Colombia is signatory to are the Geneva Conventions in the regulation of the War Geneva Conventions and their protocols. In particular, there's an Article 3 common to the conventions that forbids the killing of civilians. And although these provisions are enforced within the country and would allow for a prosecution, justice is very, very ineffective. There is a special jurisdiction which was created through the peace agreement, and that is a special tribunal for peace. Now, the special tribunal for peace, because it's looking for forgiveness, reconciliation, and so on, beyond the punishment, they're trying to establish the truth, what happened. There is a particular case number 003, which has to do with this phenomenon of false positives. And various members of the armed forces have come to the court and have declared and have accepted not just their individual responsibility, but the fact that these were systematically organized killings that were commanded, encouraged, and stipulated by commanding officers. There is, of course, a potential resort to international courts. Now, the visit from the International Criminal Court closed a preliminary investigation that had been open in Colombia, and because it was deemed that there was a special tribunal that was dealing with these particular offenses. However, I haven't lost hope. I suppose that the example that we're seeing with other countries where mass or grave violations to human rights or grave violations to humanitarian law are taking place are now the subject to intervention of other jurisdictions by means of the universal jurisdiction principle. So I am still hopeful that we go beyond recognition. Perhaps Jacqueline Castillo is more given to forgiveness, but I am a lawyer. And, what we have is that when we see a factual matrix to which certain laws apply, we want to apply them and we want to see the consequences. We want to have those who were responsible for organizing the targeted killing of innocent civilians, young men looking for opportunities of work, trying to better their lives, being assassinated in this fashion. To bring those to justice and make those in power at the time of these orders accountable.
Great, thank you very much, Jimena, for your intervention. And I'm now going to present Jonathan Mosquera, and he will speak about the international work for justice undertaken by the NGO MAFAPO that's been working with the mothers of Soacha.
Hi, thanks a lot for having me here. My name is Jonathan Mosquera. I'm a member of MAFAPO International, which is the group of volunteers that collaborates with the mothers of the Falsos Positivos, MAFAPO. We have everybody's welcome here, regardless of philosophical, cultural, political, religious orientation. Only condition is that you support the struggle for truth of the mothers of MAFAPO. We collaborate with many other forces and many other people who are fighting for democratic rights, because we understand that in order to fight for the truth, you have to defend democracy. So, for example, we have collaborated and show our support to the demonstrations of George Floyd, killing of George Floyd, the Nigerian massacre of the Lekki toll gate, Sarah Evra, who was a lady murdered by the police, kidnapped, raped and murdered by the police last year here in England. But also, of course, we have tried to take the voice of many of the victims in Colombia to the whole world. We have tried to bring attention to the cases of the 4th of September, the people that were incinerated in a police station in Soacha, 9th of September in Bogota, where at least 12 people were killed by the police in 2019. Then, of course, the victims of 2021, the uprising in Colombia, where the police responded brutally, and as a result, dozens were killed. So we have collaborated closely and supported the families of Siloe, Laura Guerrero, a mother of one of the victims in Cali, Sitsi Uribe, the sister of one of those assassinated in Pereira, Lucas Villa, Doris Carvajal, the sister of Cabo Raúl Carvajal, a soldier who was executed illegally by the army for because he refused to commit an extrajudicial execution. And of course, we have tried to show the world the truth about the Attila soldiers, were 19 soldiers that were expelled and humiliated for the crime of refusing to commit an extrajudicial execution. We have done many of these things in a coordinated manner with cities across the world, like last year, 30th August, performance, 6,402 performance in London, Rome, Milan, Madrid, Canary Islands, Paris, Burgos, many other cities. Last week, 28th of April, a couple of weeks ago, we were also in many cities around the world: Florence, Milano, London, Madrid, Melbourne, all across the planet, commemorating the victims of the uprising and above all, fighting for justice for those whose deaths have gone unpunished. We side with everybody who's fighting for justice and
Okay, now I'm going to present, thank you very much, Jonathan, for your presentation. And now I want to pass over to Camilo Ortado, who works in the Colombian Truth Commission, and his work focuses on the work of recognition. And he's going to tell us a bit more about the event that the Truth Commission is organizing on the 10th of May, Tuesday 10th of May, in Soacha. So thank you very much, Camilo.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon for the people who see us from Europe and America. Thank you for attending this conversation about extrajudicial execution in Colombia. Thanks to mothers of MAFAPO, Jacqueline, hi, how are you? To MAFAPO International, Jonathan, Patricia, Jimena, Sergeant Mora, James, Peter, and all the people to have helped with this conversation. My name is Camilo Ortado, and I work in the Truth Commission of Colombia. And today I am going to talk about how the Truth Commission has carried out to research and has recognized extrajudicial executions as a systemic and massive practice carried out by the National Army of Colombia. I work in the group that works in process to recognize the victims and also so that those responsible from crimes and serious violations of human rights accept their responsibility. Like a context, the Commission work focused on two lines. On the one hand, research, and on the other hand, the social dialogue. For the research of extrajudicial execution, the Truth Commission conducted 142 interviews with victims, 178 interviews with members of the army responsible for the extrajudicial executions, and 412 interviews with experts, witnesses, and other people who provide information related to facts, dynamics, and context of extrajudicial execution. The Commission received 320 reports and 91 cases related to extrajudicial execution for different civil society organizations, including MAFAPO. This information will be in the chapter of the state crimes. In this moment, I can't say more about the investigation. This will publish in the end of the June. We invite you to know in June the results of this research. But as soon as social dialogue recognition is one of the objectives of the Commission, and it is a very important part of the public dialogue promoted by the Commission to think about the importance of stopping and not repeating the intern conflict and being able to live in peace in Colombia. For 3.5 years, the Commission has carried out three processes have been about extrajudicial execution. The first was a recognition of the victims of the so-called false positives in Colombia and social organization to work for true justice and no repetition. The second was to recognize the responsibility of the army in many extrajudicial execution in the department of Casanare. The third recognized the responsibility of the army in the forces displacement and murder of 11 young people in Toluviejo. Toluviejo is a small town in the department of Sucre. And the next Tuesday, May 10, is our most important recognition, and the last one made by the True Commission is the recognition about extrajudicial execution in Bogota and Soacha. We have worked on this process with mothers of Soacha for more than 2 years. We have also worked with members with the army. They will accept the responsibility in extrajudicial execution of young people for Bogota and Soacha in a public space. And in this case is the square in Soacha, and this is a very important place. Soacha is a reference in the history of the extrajudicial execution in Colombia. The case of the 19 young people who meeting in 2017 and 2018 were the beginning of a long process of searching for truth and justice. The work of the women of the MAFAPO organizations have been very important for the country and the world to know today that there were at least 6,402 victims of extrajudicial execution throughout the country in the 32 departments. For this reason, it is so important for the Commission and to the country to make this event a part to the closer of the work of the True Commission.
And I'll just repeat the hashtag. There's a Twitter hashtag, which is hashtag a las madres les digo. And I hope both those will appear on the screen when we've managed to edit this recording of this discussion. So thank you very much, Camilo, for that explanation. I don't know whether I can just quickly invite Carlos or Jacqueline, whether there was anything they wanted to add to what they said before we finish the meeting today.
Yo sí quiero agregar algo, Peter, que la lucha no termina aquí. Sabemos que son más de 6.402 casos. Ese trabajo que hizo la JEP fue bastante importante para nosotros, mostrar que sí se trató de una práctica sistemática bajo una política de Estado, donde de acuerdo a los resultados recibían esos beneficios como era ascensos, medallas, vacaciones y dinero, y que lamentablemente yo soy la que manejo las redes de MAFAPO, he recibido mensajes en varias de las redes, incluso en mi WhatsApp hay muchos casos que no han sido denunciados, familiares que dicen que por temor, otros familiares dicen porque no tienen recursos para un abogado. Incluso me han contactado militares. Hace poco tuve el contacto con un militar que me dijo que él tenía conocimiento de casos de falsos positivos en un municipio que se llama Junín, que eso es saliendo por La Calera, eso es Cundinamarca, y todavía creo que hay muchos territorios donde probablemente hay muchos casos de ejecuciones extrajudiciales, y creería que sería uno de los grandes aportes desde los militares que ellos contaran de dónde más reclutaron jóvenes, dónde hay jóvenes sepultados en nuestro colectivo. Hay una mamita que no ha logrado recuperar los restos de su hijo. Sabemos que están en el COPE y en el Cesar, pero allí hay más de 200 NNs enterrados que no ha sido posible identificarlo, y es ese llamado a seguir luchando desde la unidad de búsqueda para poder identificar los miles de NNs que hay a lo largo y ancho del país. Y creo que el gran aporte desde los militares involucrados es que nos cuenten que no fue solamente Soacha y Bogotá, sino que nos digan de dónde más reclutaron jóvenes y dónde se encuentran sepultados. Muchas gracias.
Yo quiero de nuevo darle las gracias a todos por este espacio, por tomar de su tiempo para escuchar estas historias, por tomar de su tiempo para hacer que esto no se olvide, porque podemos contar la verdad, pero si se olvida podemos volver a cometer ese error. Quiero aprovechar para saludar a todas las mamitas. Ya se viene el Día de las Madres y decirles que son unas heroínas, que las admiro mucho, que las respeto mucho, que ellas saben lo importante que son para mí, que es una lucha muy difícil, es muy duro, y todo lo que hemos tenido que sacrificar, creo que mucha gente no lo comprendería ni lo entendería, todo lo que hemos sacrificado, inclusive salir de nuestros países cuando ya tenías una visión de lo que querías ser y a dónde querías llegar, y tener que ver estancado eso por hacer las cosas correctamente. Yo le decía a alguna persona en estos días que lamentablemente la vida no es como una película donde el bueno al final gana, que estamos en la vida real donde los malos muchas veces son los que ganan. O lamentablemente lo que he vivido yo, la mayoría de veces los malos son los que ganan. Y no podemos permitir que esto siga pasando. No podemos seguir permitir que las personas que han hecho las cosas mal salgan impunes, que olvidemos lo que ellos hicieron. Y tenemos que luchar todos los días para que esto no se olvide. Tenemos que darle la mano a estas mamitas de Soacha, y tenemos que estar muy comprometidos con estas instituciones que abren estos espacios para que podamos manifestarnos. Por último, yo tengo una quimera, y es que a pesar de que voy a salir del ejército prontamente, si así puede, si pudiera, quiero que sea de verdad una institución que vuelva a ser valorada y querida por el 100% de los colombianos, que sea la primera organización en derechos humanos, para que no haya manto de duda cuando la institución actúa, y no como ahora que cualquier cosa que haga la institución es cuestionada, pero es por culpa de las mismas acciones de la institución. De nuevo, mil gracias y un fuerte abrazo para todos, y para la señora Jacqueline, la amo.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for your comments. And Jimena, I think, wants to add one point as well. And I just want to go ahead, Jimena.
Thank you, Peter. I just wanted to again thank everyone for the opportunity to share some views, some thoughts on how to bring together law and false positivos. I suppose this is the quest for justice. As a mother, I felt for them when the first news came out about this systematic practice by the army. Also, as a sister, I do understand Jacqueline's fight. I love my country. I want it to be a better place for everyone to be. I want young men that want to go look for a job, be confident that they're going to go back home that night and not end up in a mass grave. I want to thank the Truth Commission for enabling all these spaces to allow for the truth to be known, and so that hopefully we can heal find justice and construct a better society.
Thank you, Jimena. Can I then, just as a way of rounding off the event tonight, thank all the speakers. Can I thank Jacqueline Castillo for participating and telling her story. I know it's difficult to keep talking about these things, but this is, hopefully this is part of that process of recognition, and hopefully also sending the message to the international community so they understand, the international community understands the reality of what has happened and is happening in Colombia. Thank Sergeant Carlos Eduardo Mora for speaking, to Jimena Bengoechea for your intervention, to Jonathan Mosquera and MAFAPO for helping to set up this meeting, and Camilo Ortado for participating and telling us about the event on Tuesday and the work of the Truth Commission around recognition and around the Madres de Soacha case. I'll just take this opportunity to remind you, as I say, hopefully this will appear on the screen, but the hashtag for messages of solidarity, hashtag a las madres les digo, and if not, people can send a message, a WhatsApp message to +57 304 276 7628. And thank you and good night to all those who have given your time to listening to us tonight. Thank you.